Welcome to today's podcast. I'll be doing a little podcast that features a short nonfiction narrative about my life, as well as presenting a business plan to address a problem in America, specifically in California, as well as present a solution to it. To help me with my personal narrative and continue with the flow of the podcast, I'll be having my friend Michael Rodriguez assist me with a few questions. First, we'll be discussing a little bit about how I got into the underground medicine community. For this, I'll have Michael Rodriguez start with the questioning.
How did you get into the underground medicine community?
For me, the path to the underground medicine community was a long one. I first had heard of these psychedelics, meaning ayahuasca and iboga, through a few friends, and throughout my rehab experiences, I realized that rehab was not the solution and found this radical plant medicine called iboga. This plant medicine then led me to finding this underground medicine community in Temple, where I went to receive my first psychedelic shamanic ceremony for healing. Upon entering the temple, which was actually just a building in Los Angeles, I felt like I was transported into a completely different world, a place that was full of candles, Eastern architecture and paintings, and I couldn't believe that some place like this existed in Los Angeles. Regardless to say, I was immediately intrigued.
What about the community did you want to explore that made you eventually decide to come back?
In regards to the community, it was basically originally the facilitators that greeted me at my first iboga experience. They were very comforting and opening, and I felt a sense of, peace and at home when I went there for such a, not traumatic, but such a radical treatment. And going into a treatment like that and feeling comforted and taken care of throughout the whole process gave me a great sense of, almost family and something that I wanted to experience a little more. On top of that, I came to realize that they had other offerings throughout the week, and some of those offerings were a potluck. In this potluck, we were able to join with other like-minded individuals that had participated in similar plant medicine, psychedelic, and theogen ceremonies and discuss our experiences in a safe setting with other people that could also understand what we had been going through and connect on a different level than people, in the regular community. Another part that I really liked about it was after my ibogaine treatment, I was having quite a, psychedelic or psychotic breakdown, and I reached out to some of the facilitators at the temple, and they immediately allowed me to come to the safe space of the temple and talk me down from my psychotic breakdown. They also administered another natural plant medicine called Combo. This gained another understanding for me and the use of these plants in order to form a sense of healing. So basically, the whole aspect of a safe space and community of like-minded individuals that truly cared for people in a loving sense is what brought me back to a culture that I had so been longing for, as well as coming to having a liking and developing a great connection with the shaman.
Speaking of the shaman, how was he?
The shaman, Jarvis, was actually a great man. He eventually came to take a liking to me and began undergoing shamanic training and apprenticeship. This is what really got me into the underground medicine community and volunteering at the temple at a consistent basis, as well as going over to my shaman's house and training with him daily. Through this shamanic training, I gained a new understanding for what it means to be a spiritual guide for others. My shaman taught me to work with many plant medicines, including ayahuasca, iboga, San Pedro, and psilocybin. Unfortunately, my shaman had an abrupt passing, and now the temple has come into a slight disarray. I was able to luckily find another shamanic practitioner that took me under their wing and is now currently guiding me and showing me practices and ways to continue my spiritual work.
So is this how you've continued to further your knowledge?
Yes. Actually, I've continued to further my knowledge and my practice in a few different ways. Firstly, I've been hosting ayahuasca ceremonies through the guidance of another practitioner. By hosting these ceremonies, I'm better able to understand how this plant medicine works with people and guide them, starting from a lower apprentice level and then working my way up. I also was given the blessing to host iboga ceremonies from my shaman Jarvis before he had his passing. I've hosted a couple iboga ceremonies with great success. This hosting of ceremonies is a way to further develop the practice of healing people through these uses of alternative medicine. Lastly, I'm currently finishing my college degree, and upon completion of my college degree, I will then be heading to the Amazon or the jungles of West Africa, Gabon specifically, to get proper shamanic training from the tribes. Once receiving proper shamanic training, I will then have the blessing to ethically serve the medicine in the States.
Once you've completed your training ethically, what are the next steps to applying this towards your clients or patients?
In order to then serve the underprivileged community, I have created a two-part business plan that both incorporates creating one, a business, and then secondly, a piece of legislation in order to help facilitate the ethical and practical use of these entheogens in community and society. Starting first with the path of legislation. Currently, legislation was recently passed in the city of Oakland decriminalizing the use of iboga, any DMT containing plant species, as well as psilocybin. This is in congruence with the legalization or decriminalization that happened with marijuana in California. I plan to further this legislation effort by bringing the legislation efforts down to the city and county of Los Angeles. In order to further this legislation, I will join with the Oakland group that forefronted the passing of this legislation in Oakland, as well as conjoining with multiple projects, as I discussed in previous podcasts, one being the AWARE project, and secondly being MAPS. By using these multiple resources that are trying to promote the safe and ethical use and practice of psychedelics and integration of their use in society, we can then create a forefront to change the legislation and therefore change the current narrative in American society. The second part is my then creating a business plan. That business plan is called the Center for Entheogenic Enlightenment, or a Church of Entheogenic Enlightenment. Here, I will be creating a 501c3 charity, as also discussed in my previous podcast with the Ibogaine Rehabilitation Center. By creating this Entheogenic Enlightenment Center, I would like to be able to use different plant medicines, not only iboga, but iboga, ayahuasca, San Pedro, psilocybin, peyote, to name a few, to perform acts of healing in order to achieve states of enlightenment for others. This center also uses a two-pronged approach. The first prong is, as stated by my mission statement, is to create a center for people to experience healing through different entheogens, which are plant medicines, as a tool to find the power inside themselves to overcome anything in their life that's been affecting or holding them back. Once they use these plants as a tool, the goal is to then facilitate inner growth and mindfulness with and without the need of plants, through different integration techniques such as breath work, grounding exercises, meditation, and yoga. By combining this two-pronged approach, it creates a need that has been lacking in society. Currently in society, there is a disconnect with mindful practices due to the complete electronic takeover and rat race that we constantly face, trying to get the next best thing, or achieve higher social status. By creating a center for mindfulness and a place for people to realize the truth inside themselves, it will provide a service that will greatly impact society one person at a time, creating a greater change.
Nice.
Thank you for listening to my podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. And I would also like to thank my special guest, Michael Rodriguez, for his contribution.
It was my pleasure.
Bye-bye.